Coach Lay and Coach Justice with Lab. How are you doing, Justice?
I'm doing well. I'm trying to take this new year to the next level. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Today, this week has been very interesting for many reasons, but it's been a great week overall. Today, me and Justice are going to go over two different styles of periodization. I'm going to touch on linear periodization or traditional periodization. And what are you touching on, Coach?
I'll be touching on the nonlinear or undulating periodization model.
Cool beans. So, with no further ado, please make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And we'll get right into today's information. Today I'm going to go over linear periodization. Linear periodization, guys, is your traditional periodization that you see in most box gyms. It's a very easy style of training to follow where you're just gradually increasing your intensity over time, and you want to stay in that area for a few weeks, maybe a month. But let's get into more to the specifics of it. So with your linear periodization, it is a traditional style of training that gradually increases intensity over time. What do I mean by that? It means that hypothetically, I'm going to start off my bench press at, we'll say, 190 pounds. So I'll bench press 190 pounds for about a week to get my muscles used to pushing that weight and getting stronger. Then I'm going to add about 2.5 to 5 pounds the following week to get that 190 up to 195. Then I'm going to add another 5 pounds the following week and gradually build upon that weight. So that is one of the unique things to linear periodization, that it is a gradual increase in intensity. Again, as I stated, it typically lasts for about 3 to 4 weeks in regards to your cycles, sometimes even 6 weeks, depending on how your body adapts to those challenges. Now, the unique thing to linear periodization, as opposed to what Coach Justice is going to talk about, is that linear periodization only allows you to work on one fitness goal at a time. What do you mean? What I mean by that is that in linear periodization, there's typically about 4 different phases: your muscular endurance, your hypertrophy, your strength, and your power. So you'll be in each of those phases for about 4 to 6 weeks. Now, again, because you are in each one of those phases 4 to 6 weeks, you're only allowed to work on that one fitness goal during that time period. Also, with your linear periodization, you proceed from a high volume, low intensity to a high intensity, low volume. What I mean by that is that typically when you're beginning your linear periodization, you'll start at a light weight and you'll do a lot of reps. But as you move from one phase to the next phase, the amount of reps will begin to decrease and the weight will begin to increase. And also with that, the amount of rest in between your sets will then thus increase as well. So again, you'll go from a high volume, low intensity to a high intensity, low volume. As I stated, there are 4 phases typically to your traditional linear periodization. You'll start normally with muscular endurance, where you are, again, a lightweight, high amount of reps. You'll then move into your hypertrophy, where the weight isn't going to start to increase. The volume of those reps will start to decrease. You'll then go into your strength phase, and then you'll then go into your power phase. Each one of these phases will last anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks, depending on how your body adapts to those stressors. Now, there are some great advantages to training in this methodology. Number one, it's great for beginners. It's great for beginners because it's very easy to learn. It's very easy to allow a person to gain confidence in getting in the gym, getting the training, and just understanding the nuances to their body and how their body is going to respond, and get that confidence to actually move weight. It also allows time for you to understand and learn the techniques that are needed when lifting weights
Mm.
so we are able to avoid injury. Thirdly, it does develop joint and ligament integrity due to, during your muscular endurance, the high volume of reps. So because you're doing rep after rep after rep after rep after rep, it allows your joints and your ligaments to build some integrity so that, again, we're able to avoid injury. And lastly, it allows for a slow, steady progress. So again, for your beginners that are coming into the gym, it allows them to gain that confidence, to see that progress, and to go at a nice, steady, slow pace.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are some disadvantages to your linear periodization. As I stated before, it only allows you to focus on one set of fitness goals at a time. And therefore, I would not recommend linear periodization for an athlete because an athlete needs to have their power, they need to have their strength, they need to have their muscular endurance all at the same time. So for that reason, I would not recommend it for an athlete because you're focusing on one fitness goal at a time, your other areas of fitness and performance are going to regress. Because if I'm spending so much time in my hypertrophy, then my muscular endurance is coming at the expense of me losing my muscular endurance. If I'm working on my muscular endurance for 4 to 6 weeks, it's coming at the expense of my strength. So again, this is great for a beginner. It's great for someone who may even be looking to do some physique competition, but it is not great for your traditional athlete. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Coach Justice so that he can explain nonlinear or undulating periodization.
Thank you, Coach. I really enjoyed your explanation of the linear model, and you definitely hit some points that I myself was going to hit, and I'm going to hit them again just so we make sure that we truly understand the concepts between the two. So, being that mine is the non-linear model or the undulating model, it's just as the word suggests. It is not prototypical. I mean, there are some versions out there that are considered standard, but for the most part, this is planned based upon your situation, your athletes, because this is predominantly used around athletes. It could be planned around school, injury. You can literally adapt this one to anything. And that's honestly, I wish they would have named it the adaptive model because that's exactly what this was built for. This was built to adapt to whatever stimulus we have outside of competition or inside of competition. Um, Typically, you can either switch as far as timing is concerned. Typically, you could switch from phase to phase because that's what this adapts to, making sure that you can use or work in more than one phase. You can switch from phase to phase within the microcycle or each workout, each daily, or each mesocycle. So you can switch between 2 weeks or every other week, or you can choose even month to month, depending on what's going on. Once again, it all depends on exactly what your goal is and what your athletes are trying to accomplish. Now, the beauty of this one is if, let's say, you are injured or you need to take a day off or whatever, this workout is so adaptive that you can afford to miss those days, and then that's considered a rest day. And once you have your rest day, then you keep moving on, and then you could even push the cycle ahead forward and just continue on with the workouts because you're hitting so many different spots. The benefits of this is making sure that you can hit all of these different phases. So your power phase, your strength phase, your hypertrophy slash muscular endurance phase. You're making sure you can hit all of these different areas. That way you're prepared for that football game where you may be running for a long distance, running for a couple of seconds, or that track event where you'll be running a different event, and then you might be jumping. So you may be long distance, and then you may have some jumping ability. So your body has to be able to switch from phase to phase and be in shape for that. So switching from these different areas, this also varies in intensity or rep range. So let's say you want to have the exercises, or you want to teach your athletes the same exercise. Well, you can vary in reps and percentage. That way it's still going to have a different benefit. So for instance, if your athletes are into squatting, you can have them squatting a smaller amount of sets and a larger amount of reps with not that high of a percentage, and that's going to be working on your muscular endurance and or your hypertrophy, just to make sure that their muscles are prepared for the following phase. Then within that same week, after a proper amount of rest, then you can increase the weight, and then all of a sudden they're lifting for strength or power. And obviously the rep ranges will vary and become smaller. So this one, honestly, it depends on the artist's creation. I myself tend to use this based upon my microcycles, so within my own workouts each day, and it also depends on which athlete I'm dealing with. You cannot use this for, or you can afford to do this with a different athlete inside of that same team. So for instance, you have your different positions in football. Obviously the athletes don't do the same thing, so you can vary their percentages and their rep ranges in that workout. Whereas if you're doing a team maybe on the linear program, you're going to try and get everybody to lift the same exact way. Some athletes are going to benefit from it, some athletes aren't. um, and with that, we can speak about the more of the benefits. Because this offers such a variety, um, it makes sure that the athlete is properly conditioned. Now, with that, it also comes with some disadvantages, because some strength coaches or those that aren't prepared, or even some athletes, may not be prepared to lift in all of these different segments, may not be prepared to adhere to all of these different percentages or loads. Um, I found that, or during my research, I found that if a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of assistive exercises, where like your hamstring exercises or your lower back exercises, or anything that isn't focused on, that is predominantly considered an injury, or may offer some nagging injuries to your athletes. If that isn't touched upon or adhered to and made part of your program, then the athlete could risk injury, because you're lifting in all of these different systems. Um, the same thing goes for if you're trying to lift in all of these different systems and the percentages are so high or too high, then the athlete may become overworked. Um, that's where the science and the artistry comes into place. You want to make sure that the athlete isn't lifting in the same percentages for the same systems. I find myself that if we're lifting and we're doing a push day, and let's say my upper body push is, the percentages are higher than my lower body push, well, that means that we're lifting in two different systems with two different, or sorry, we're lifting in two different systems with two different percentages, and we're hitting two different phases of our workouts. And then obviously we switch it throughout the mesocycle, or even within the week. Um, it's very, 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 um, what's the word? I'll just say adaptive again, just because of what you can bring to the table with this one, and how creative you can actually be. Um, there's a difference between a planned and unplanned, and a flexible or non-flexible, or however you want to say it. And that obviously just comes down to how you view whatever season you're going into, or whatever situation you're going to go into. There's a lot to learn about this program, and if you wanted to research it more, I'm sure we can drop a link to a book or two in the bottom of the at the bottom of this video. But um, I do find this one to be strictly used for athletes or even in bodybuilders or strength competitors, depending on what type of adaptations they're trying to get to. This definitely hits upon a lot of it.
So, yes, and I'd like to say that you brought up a great point, Coach, before we close, and that is that with undulating periodization, um, typically one of the reasons why I like to use it for athletes as opposed to a beginner
Mm-hmm.
is because you're lifting and they're what I call undulating a wave approach, meaning that those percentages go up and down with each training session. And
Mm-hmm.
because such an undulation in the percentage in which you're lifting from day to day, if the body isn't prepared correctly, it can definitely lead to injury for a beginner. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the reasons why I really love linear periodization when it comes to a newbie or to a beginner when it comes to training. And with the undulation, I like to utilize that a lot with my athletes because again, their bodies are more highly trained and more prepared for the work. So I do like the fact that you did touch on how you can utilize undulation in regards to an athlete who has been returning from an injury.
Right. There's also one more point that I'd want to point out, right? And it is called specificity or sport specificity if you're referring to an athlete. And that's the whole reason as to why the athlete does this. You want to try and get as close to whatever exercise or whatever sport they're doing out there in the field by uh, getting all of these exercises and wrapping them together and then creating this 1 day's program, making sure that they can almost as close to possible simulate whatever events or athletic situations that they'll be going through. You don't really have time for that when you're in your linear program. So that's where people sway over to the non-linear program. And then you get some more of that specificity.
Gotcha. Great
Hmm.
point, Coach. So with that, we are going to wrap it up, but we'd like to thank you for your time with us today, with me and Coach Justice with the collab. Also, if you like what you are seeing and want more information or have any questions, please make sure to drop a comment down below. As Coach Justice said, that we will drop a couple of books into the comments that you can research, or better yet, just hit us up. You can find Coach Justice on Instagram
At JB Force Fitness, at JB Force Fitness.
and you can find me on Instagram at Magis